All right, let's talk a little bit about these problems first. Percent by mass is defined as the mass of the part over the mass of the whole. Now, the mass of the whole is the mass of the solid that's dissolved plus the mass of the water. The most common mistake in this type of problem is not looking at the sig figs in the bottom as determined by the addition of those two values. You need to look at decimal places because this is an addition. Now, the sig figs could be determined either by the numerator, the top, or the denominator, the bottom. Either one could determine sig figs, depending on which has the least number of sig figs. But when you look at the mass of the whole, you make sure you apply the rules for addition subtraction by looking at the decimal places. Another common error is to not pay attention to whether or not you're asked for the percent by mass of the solid, the dissolved material, or if you're asked for the mass percent of the water. Either one of these could be on your quiz, so you need to pay close attention to whether or not you're asked for percent by mass of the solid. It's usually a sugar or a salt, or if you're asked for percent by mass of the water. In this first problem, we're given so many grams of sugar and so many grams of water. First, we want the mass percent of the sugar. Here's the initial setup. The percent by mass sugar is equal to the mass of sugar over the mass of the solution, which is the water plus the sugar, and this whole fraction is multiplied by 100%. Now we're going to pay close attention to units throughout Chem 110. And if we look at this problem, we see that units of grams divided by grams cancel out. And the unit that survives is the unit of percent. As usual, we're going to write down our calculator answer first. Write down your calculator answer, then go back and worry about the sig figs. Let's look at the sig figs in the denominator. We have 1 decimal place in this number, 2 decimal places here. So in our result, we can report our answer to 1 decimal place. Numerically, that results in 4 sig figs. So we have 4 sig figs in the denominator, 2 sig figs in the numerator, so we are limited to 2 sig figs. So we draw our line reminding us of that. This first number to be dropped is less than 5, so we just drop the rest of it. Be careful to include the unit. Our final answer is 7.0%. You get 1 point for the calculator answer, 1 point for the final answer with correct sig figs and units. All right, for this same solution, we're going to calculate the percent water. Okay, so we've input our values and we have our calculator answer. So the mass of the water over the mass of the solution multiplied by 100%. Now we'll go back and worry about the significant figures. Okay, in the denominator, we know that there's going to be 4 sig figs because we've already done that determination up here. That's the same problem. So 4 sig figs. In the numerator, we see that there are also 4 sig figs. So our final answer can be expressed with 4 sig figs. 1, 2, 3, 4. Draw our line. The first number we drop is less than 5. So we just drop everything and write our answer with the correct number of sig figs and the units. 92.95%. Okay. Note here that the same numbers end up with different numbers of sig figs in our answer. That's often going to be the case. You have to look at each calculation individually. How many sig figs are appropriately expressed in the denominator? How many in the numerator? We'll solve the second problem the same way. Again, we want to note whether or not the question asks for the percent of the solid, the dissolved stuff, or the percent water. Let's look at the denominator here. So our result is 101. How many sig figs are used in the answer? Well, we see we have 3 decimal places here. we have 0 decimal places in this number, so we have to round to the ones, which means that this is going to have 3 sig figs. Our numerator has 4 sig figs, so we're limited to 3 sig figs in our answer. Our first number to be dropped is less than 5, so we write our correct answer with the correct sig figs as 4.95%. All right, for the percent water, the setup is the mass of the water over the mass of the solution. Considering sig figs, we've already determined that the bottom has 3 sig figs. In this case, the numerator has 2 sig figs, so our answer is limited to 2 sig figs, and we can write it correctly with the correct number of sig figs and units as 95%.